Howdy, lieutenants and economists.
The most volatile, evil, disgusting things on the planet, humans. If you have a video request, you can always go to assholeconsulting.com.
Yeah, I am gonna charge you, kids. And that is the importance of not fucking up.
You are such an asshole!
Hello everybody. Boy, today, or this week rather, is where I have to economics a lot. I've had another economic request. If you ever request any consultations, guidance, leadership, wisdom, or a swift kick in the ass, and anything I can consult you upon legally, go to assholeconsulting.com and I will answer your questions as long as you pay me. And yes, I did just wake up. So, old tired Cappy here. Eric writes, what is your opinion on Trump's recent statements about defaulting on the dollar and afterwards renegotiating U.S. debt, and about how far spread concern that this will kill the global economy because no one will trust the dollar anymore? Best regards, Eric. All right, well, first, you're never going to kill the economy unless you kill all people, because the economy is the people. People need food, we need to trade, we need to specialize, we need to have the division of labor, unless you're Karl Marx, where everybody could be everything. And well, man. So this, you will not kill the economy. You will definitely throw it into a recession. You will definitely throw it into a global financial, I wouldn't even call it crisis. You're just going to have a very, very, very bad recession or depression. It's hard to tell if you did it the right way. Like, for example, the financial crisis of 2007. If we just let the banks tank, we would have had one really, really sucky year, maybe a year and a half. And we let prices fall as they may. We let the economy do what it does, and that is filter out the shit, filter out the incompetent, and we wouldn't have any of these incompetent corporate banker douchebags making bad loans. You wouldn't have a bunch of bubbles, including the housing bubble, education bubble, retirement bubble. And prices would drop. Things would be much more affordable, for the younger generation anyway. And then businesses would be profitable, and the economy would start growing again, faster than this lethargic limping along we've had since 2007, 2008. So, it could be devastating, but, I'll tell you this. It's not as devastating as World War II was on Japan and Germany, okay? It's not going to be as devastating as that. And look, they still came back. So unless you wipe out the people, you will not kill the economy. You can throw it into recession, but people need to eat and live and fuck. And those three things is what's going to make sure the economy, at least at some level, continues on. Now, my opinion about Trump saying let's just default, I completely agree with it, not from a moral issue, but because we can't afford it. Well, I mean, look at the fucking who's going to pay back that debt. I mean, who? Do you know who? Right now, it's the millennials. Do you think those fucktards have the work ethic, the intelligence, and the determination to go out and kick ass like the World War II generation? Do you look at our economic growth. And this has been going on since the 50s. Ever since roughly the 50s and 60s, U.S. economic growth has been declining. All right? It was 4.25% back in the olden days. This is on a 20-year average scale. And for the past 20 years, it's been about 2.25%. Even worse now, since the latest figures showed almost no economic growth. But the larger point is we simply are not, we are capable, we have the manpower to do it. We choose not to. We choose to instead force our little children to stay in school until they're practically fucking 30. We tell them to major in the most spectacularly stupid bullshittery we've ever told generations to major in. We don't pursue policies to help economic growth, like eliminating corporate taxes, having the United States be a tax haven for all these corporations to come here and invest. We don't want none of that. We sit and bitch and moan about white males, productive people, the rich, and fucking privilege and all this. I mean, fuck America. We just simply have chosen not to be a productive nation. So we do not have the ability to pay it back. We simply don't. And Trump is just pointing it out. He's just being an empiricist. He's pointing out the emperor has no clothes. It's just that the entire world, well, not I shouldn't say the entire world, but a lot of the various aspects of the global financial system and the global economy is in part I wouldn't say dependent upon the U.S. Debt or U.S. government, but they're interlocked with a lot of people hold U.S. debt. A lot of people hold federal treasuries. But still, Trump just pointing out, hey, we're not going to pay it back. And you know something? In my lifetime, I like that fucking debt not to be there and stop paying interest on it, even though it's a small amount because we have such a pathetically low, an artificially low interest rate. I like to basically stop paying the fuckers who lent the U.S. government money. I like to stop. This is no different than these banker scum I work for, where they'd lend money to the most shitty, most unreliable, most untrustworthy, highest credit risk people that you knew were never going to pay it back. And you fucking idiots out there, you pension fund managers, you banks, you hedge funds, and you stupid fucking pensioners in your pension funds, and you retirees, I'm going to invest in government securities, and you morons overseas, the Chinese government, the Japanese government, the Europeans, you fucking lent the U.S. government money? Do you know what we spend our money on? See, at least in banking, when someone asks for money, you look at their income statement, or you look at what they're going to take that money and do with it. Apparently you fuckers didn't take a look and notice that all we do, well not all we do, but basically we don't invest that money. I know that Democrats on the left say, we invest in our future, we invest in education. No, you look at the budget, you look at the financial statement, and all we do is we piss the fucking money away. It's not even investment. The government can't invest. It can't, not unless you're like China or something like that, where the government actually owns a company. All right, what we do in the United States is we buy military shit. And that doesn't pay dividends, okay? We also then, 70% of our budget goes to pay fucking parasites, and that's what it motherfucking is. We pay fucking losers to vote for the Democrats. That's what it is. And then there's also, I know, there's corporate welfare. Read my post about it. I know, but it pales in comparison. The vast majority of the money that you have lent to the U.S. government is not invested, therefore it does not provide a rate of return. Therefore, what the fuck were you thinking? I mean, this is a very simple one. You don't understand. It's the future. Fuck you. We don't invest. You lent money to an insolvent, money-losing, bribery, pretty much criminal organization. At least criminals have a shot at making money. At least organized crime makes some fucking dough. At least there's fucking Las Vegas to point to. Say, hey, look at that. That's what organized crime did. El Chapo, he gets blowjobs in the fucking prison. What does the federal government got? Nothing to show for it. Nothing but a fucking bunch of trailer trash over in Wyoming and fucking ghettos and barrios in every major city. Oh yeah, there's where your fucking money is going. So you lent money on that, so fuck you. Me and the other taxpayers are sick and tired of paying the interest on that debt for these lazy motherfuckers, not to mention the military. I'm pro-military, but like it doesn't pay, it's not an investment, all right? And you fuckers are making me and the tax dollars pay the interest on that debt. Well, you know something? Fuck you. We absolutely should default. And we should be giving the finger to everybody to remind them, hey, we don't care what fucking hokey-pokey academia and bullshit gobbledygook would speak that fucking Krugman lays out before you. You made a bad investment, and now it's going to go belly up. And you know what, and here's where the military does come in handy. We can give everybody the figure, because if you don't like it, come fucking take it. So, from a realistic, literal standpoint, we can't pay it off. We can maybe, if we get negative interest rates, start whittling it down over the course of time, or have it inflated away. We could try to get our economy to boom. That's another way to get out of it, where then that way the debt relative to GDP, which is the true measure of debt, would go down and be lowered. And then it'd be like, oh gosh, I have $50,000 in debt and you make $10 an hour. All of a sudden you get a new job and you're making $100 an hour. Well, all of a sudden that $50,000 doesn't seem that bad. So that's another way to do it. But like I said before, America has chosen not to be productive. So that's not an option. We don't want to go to work. We don't want to do that. So Trump is just merely, calling a spade and say, hey, that's what it is. So and so I like that, because this at least accelerates and increases the chance that we might just default on the debt. We might be able, and you know what? I think it'd be fucking spectacular. I'm going to get into what will happen, but wouldn't that be fun to watch, ladies and gentlemen? I mean, that'd be more fun than watching Sweden get raped. It would be so fucking entertaining. It would be awesome. It'd be like, oh, I'd watch the news again. Oh, diggity, who's bankrupt now? it would just be like 2008, 2009, where I'd go and I'd watch all the different banks that I worked for, I had to work with, and see them go belly up or fire their staff or get under cease and desist orders by the feds. It'd be fucking great. It would just be great. I mean, for those of you that got kids and you're not minimalist, it would suck. For those of you, well, and then for those of you with debt, I think your debts might potentially be inflated away, so there might be some benefit there. But yeah, it would be a wonderful, spectacular shit show. It would be absolutely wonderful. Now, I did want to go and, that's just my opinion on it. It's kind of like, well, there it is, that's what it is, and Trump's just pointing it out like he's done. What would happen? Now, there's no way to tell. It all depends, but I've come through a couple things. I had to sit down and think this through. Okay, what would logically happen? How would the dominoes fall? So here's, in no particular order, I didn't rehearse this or anything, I just took some notes. This is what at least would happen. First, our creditors would be really pissed off. And like I said, tough shit, we got the military. So you'd have your pensioners, your Social Security, your CalPERS, all these people that were dumb enough, including hedge funds and mutual funds, that lent money to the government, quote, invested in federal securities, invested, like we invest in our public schools. Hey, Billy Bob, you gonna go not pay attention in school and fight your teacher? Yeah, let's give you some more money. So anyway, these people would be pissed off because their retirement would be at least whacked by a third. So pensions would have to pay out less. A lot of pensions would go belly up. The Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, which is kind of like the Federal Reserve of pensions, would probably get funded so that we'd have another TARP, but for the pensions. It's a bailout entity. But old people would just have to suck up the fact, at least for a while, that their pension, their little check, would be cut in about half. It's not fair, I'm a baby boomer. Yeah, there's the U.S. military right there. Now, the politicians, like I said, I predict they would come in with a bailout like TARP through the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, and then they'd pay the pensioners, but that would just cause inflation. So the pensioners would get their full pension, but costs would go up by twice because we're flooding the system with so much money. And unlike the banks, this money would actually hit the fucking market because people would need it for consumer goods, but I'll get to that later. Also, our creditors who are sovereign nations might get a little pissed off. The only one I'd really be worried about there would be China, but we got a way bigger military than them. And it has happened in the past when sovereign nations, a nation would go default on loans that it owed other nations, and then the nations would send in the military, or they'd seize assets. Now that could happen. But I don't think war would happen. I think China would know better because they need us more than we need them. But they would seize our assets. They would nationalize any U.S. interests. They would, what they do, whatever they could, bar war to get their pound of flesh. Okay, so that's what would happen on the creditor side. Americans would get pissed off. Me, my government check. Sovereign nations, the world would really hate our guts. But what are you going to do about it? So there's that. Risk would be reintroduced to sovereign debt. When I mean sovereign debt, I mean government debt. Not just the U.S. federal government, all governments. Because what they're going to realize is you don't just get to magically print off shit. This is not a risk-free investment. Just because we're the U.S., I love it when I was in finance classes, say, well, we assume that treasury bills are risk-free. Why do we assume that? Well, because the government's never defaulted on it. Really? So we're just going to assume there's no risk? Have you seen the balance sheet? Have you looked at the fucking retards that are being birthed out now in the U.S. that are supposed to pay this back? So we would be introducing risk again, and U.S. debt, future issuances of debt, would not be paying 1% interest or 2% interest. It would be paying 7, 8, now, well, at least at the beginning, we'd be maybe looking at 20% because no one would lend the U.S. government any more money. They'd have to be compensated for that. So the U.S. government debt interest rates would go up. Any other, I'd say, Western nation, their interest rates would go up. And with that, well, we'd have your interest expense on debt would go up, but we would have eliminated all of it saying, fuck you. So this forces the U.S. government, if we're going to renegotiate our debt, kind of like Greece, 15,000 times over. Fuck you, Greece, by the way. Okay, let's say we say, okay, we're going to take a 20%. We're only going to pay you 80 cents on the dollar. Well, what's going to happen is interest rates in the future are going to go up, and we're just going to accumulate more debt. So what we'd have to do is get rid of it all, so there's no future interest expense on the remainder of the debt, because that would just it would net out in the end, if you know what I'm saying. So is that. Just going through it. Oh, and then any debts that are tied to a U.S. Treasury, U.S. bond, and sometimes, for those of you not familiar with finance, when interest rates are determined, it's usually there's a baseline interest rate plus a premium. So, like LIBOR, Wall Street Journal Prime, these are standard private rates that are set, but which are also sometimes tied to the central bank rate. And then they say, okay, well, you're pretty risky, so it's Wall Street Journal Prime plus 5. Well, you're a lower risk. You're one of our best clients, so it's Wall Street Journal Prime plus 1%. So in the contract that's written, and when Wall Street Journal Prime changes, it adjusts. It depends monthly, quarterly, annually. And there are also a lot of loans and contracts written that are based on the 10-year Treasury, and it changes, and then your interest rates change. So those interest rates would go up. Everybody's interest expense would go up a lot, and that would cause some problems in a lot of companies' interest, and their profits might go down. They might even become insolvent. I believe a lot of those contracts would be immediately rewritten, and a lot of them also have caps, like it can't go above this interest rate. So depending on how well hedged this various amounts of debts out there and how many have a cap will determine how mooted or blunted that effect would be. But interest rates would be going up pretty much all over the place because, at least in the short term. And also, and we'll get to this, interest rates would be going up just because of inflation. Not the real interest rate, but the nominal interest rate would be going up by a lot. So kind of like think the 70s except worse. Okay, here's another thing that would happen. U.S. government would default, not paying you fuckers. No one's going to lend us money anymore, at least in the short term. So how do we finance all the welfare and trailer trash and keep it so that we could keep bribing the Democrats' voters to vote for them? Well, you have to print off more money. And so this is kind of like damned if you do, damned if you don't. No matter what, we're going to print off more money. We could honor our debts by printing off a ton of money, making the dollar worthless. Although right now we're the world's reserve currency, we could probably print, well, we're doing that effectively anyway. I would say we just print off a ton of fucking money, pay off our debts, and say, I don't care what, we're going to have inflation. But right now, as the world is sopping up our dollars and they're just sucking our almighty US dollar dick, let's print that fucking money off, pay off our fucking debts, and then at least it's sopped up. And then as time goes on, inflation would find its way back to our shores. But in either case, we are going to have to print off more money, because if we just simply default on our debts, no one's going to lend us any more money. And therefore, to finance our deficit spending, which we have, we just have to print off more money. So that's going to cause inflation. Now, what we could do is we could cut off all the welfare, single mom, ghetto, barrio, trailer trash scum, millennial college student scum, bankster scum, stop spending money on, get rid of lobbying, get rid of corporate welfare, which is significant, by the way. It's not a drop in the bucket. We stop pissing away money on the losers, and we balance the fucking budget. Then maybe we wouldn't have to print off money. Then maybe we could do that. But once again, we don't care to. We want money, 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 money. It's a heroin fix. So we would have to print off money to finance our deficits, at least in the near term. So then, banks would collapse because they hold a lot of government treasuries. Also, the U.S. defaulting might trigger some other countries to default in retaliation, because it's not like everybody holds the U.S. debt and we don't hold other people's. They might just say, well, fuck you, we're not paying the United States either. So quite quickly, all these banks that hold these various U.S. and other government securities, their balance, their assets would go down. This would trigger us to do what we're doing now, except quantitative easing, super TARP is what it would be, to recapitalize the banks, because we can't just let the banks collapse. Oh my gosh, they're just so precious. I mean, this bankster scum, they can't go without their fucking yachts and their fucking houses over in fucking Malibu. No, we gotta bail out the banks. So we would recapitalize the banks. However, we'd have kind of this, I hate to use this thing, deflationary spiral. I wouldn't call it deflation, more like an inflation sink. we would give all the banks this money to recapitalize them, but the economy would be crashing at this point, that there'd be nothing for them to lend out to, so this money would not get back into it. So there would not be inflation caused that way. Oh, there'd be inflation coming when people start, because we got to buy goods and services, but it wouldn't be happening in that way. So kind of what we have now, where we basically finance and recapitalize the banks, but a super lot amount of that. People would start trading in the dollar and starting to buy physical assets and goods and silver and gold and things like that. This would drive the dollar down in value. And we're talking globally, people would probably be getting rid of dollars. Although, we'll get to that later too, I think some people would still hold on to the dollar because they have it so psychologically ingrained in their head, they'd still hold on to the greenback. Still, some people would get rid of the US dollar. They trade in for physical assets. This would result in some cash flows going into the stock market because corporations' future profits are a natural inflationary hedge. So the assets do generate a profit, it's just what they change in pricing. So I think the stock market would actually go up, not just because of dollars flooding the markets and banks parking it there like they do now, lending it out to corporations to buy it back. But I think people would be looking for stocks as a safe haven. Although trust in the system, you'd wonder if the U.S. government is going to pay it back, why would these corporations pay it back? But still, there's we need to trade in these pieces of paper for something worthwhile. So I think commodity prices will go up. I think stocks will go up. I think land will go up. I think just common goods will go up. They're like, fuck it, I got to buy a ton of booze. At least booze will hold its value. So kind of like Weimar, not maybe people running around with barrelfuls of cash, but I think people would start, and that would further trigger inflation in both investable assets and commodities, as well as consumer goods and producer goods and stuff like that. Debts would go down. People who have mortgages and debts, that'd be good because inflation would just eat it away. This assumes you have a job, though, to keep up with the rate of inflation, and your income would help you pay off those debts with cheaper dollars, but that assumes you have a job. What else? Inflation. What also cause inflation is... Oh, yes. We would also import a ton of inflation. Just a ton. The dollar would collapse against other currencies, assuming other nations don't do this. So what we would be doing is for us to buy foreign goods from Europe or anywhere for that matter, it's going to take a lot more dollars. So we would be importing inflation. So that or a barrel of oil coming from Saudi Arabia would, or not a barrel, a gallon of gas coming from Saudi Arabia. Let's just put it that way because we know what that is. It ain't going to cost $2 no more, people. It's going to cost 10. However, that's an example. We'd actually start firing up. This would really make our oil boom come back again. Because it'd be like, well, we can't afford you. We're going to go there. So if the U.S. government ever does default, gentlemen, get your ass back to the Bakken oil field because there's going to be a ton of money to be made out there. But for the most part, anything we can't produce here would go up. Those precious little iPhones, you fucking dipshit millennials who don't know basic economics, yeah, those are going to come a little more expensive. Because here's what's funny. You think the U.S. defaults on its debt and China holds it. You think China's going to hold on and keep China keeps their exchange rate with the U.S. dollar very, very low. They keep their currency artificially weak so that they can keep selling us our crackberries and all the little trinkets and doodads that you like. But China would say, fuck that, motherfuckers. And that would be part of the economic warfare. They'd let that thing go to the top. They'd let the exchange rate float freely. And Chinese goods would become incredibly expensive. Now, of course, they could say, well, that's going to put everybody out of business. It's like, well, we just slapped you across your face. What are you going to do? I think they might actually finally get some respect and say, screw you, we're making our own shit at home for our own people. But then China would also go into recession. No one's getting out of this alive. It would be a global recession. But yes, we would definitely, any import goods would go up, I'd say at least threefold. Hard to tell, I'm just saying roughly threefold. Oh, now, here's where the interesting thing happens. And I know we're not Argentina. I don't want any of you dipshit wannabe economists go, well, see, Argentina did have the world's reserve currency. Yeah, I know, thank you very much. Go back to academia, you little faggot. Argentina likes to default on their debt every 2 weeks. I'm just kidding. They default. They had a big default back in 1999, I think, sometime in the late 90s. And this has happened. Russia defaulted. Mexico defaulted. I think pretty much every country in the world has defaulted. But in particular, with Argentina, I like pointing out to Argentina because in the 90s, I thought, I was a rookie kid. I thought no one's going to lend money ever to Argentina again because they defaulted. Who would lend? Well, sure enough, like 3 years later, fucking IMF, everybody comes in, they're trying to help. They say, Greece, look at Greece. Suck Greek dick. You want to piss away your money and vote in communist? Okay. So the world is dumber than fuck. And I'm not just talking governments, I'm talking the private sector and banks. They will lend money to people that just defaulted. I mean, look at what happened in the United States here. It was 7 years ago everyone defaulted on their homes. Guess what? Oh, it's not on your record anymore. I remember some friends of mine who did default and walked away from their home. They're still getting credit cards. People are still lending them money at very reasonable rates, I might add, too. So what I think is going to happen is with that mentality already in there, people after the sting is gone, they'll start lending money again. I mean, let's look at it this way: how many of you idiots are banking with a bank that took TARP money? I don't. I found out a bank that doesn't take TARP money. My bank's called TCF, Twin Cities Federal. They're not available all over the place. How many of you just, okay, we'll go with Bank of America. Okay, we'll still go with Wells Fargo. Oh, I'd have to go to the bank. I mean, you guys will forgive anything. You will. You'll bet on the fucking Apple guy says, we don't have time for global warm change deniers. Yeah, you know what? That's a damn good reason for me not to get the next iPhone. But here are my Republican and conservative and libertarian friends. They got their iPhone. I gotta get the new one. It's like, fuck it. I mean, it's in part where it's like, we can pound the table all we want. In the end, if you can't even get conservatives to boycott Coke, Apple, and banks that have gotten bailed out, then what hope do you have? You can't even do these simple things. So you guys will lend money to Argentina again, and you know what? The world will start lending to the United States again. Not just because of that psychology that exists, but for two other reasons. One, we're the only game on this fucking planet. What else is going to be the world's reserve currency? Even if we default, that's how bad it is. It's like being in an abusive relationship with a husband. You're like this ugly woman, and you're fat. You look like a Trigglypuff or whatever that gal's name. You look like your standard millennial feminist, and you finally fall in love. And you love this guy, and he beats you. Where's he going to go? No other guy's going to take it. You're an ugly feminist millennial fuck. This guy could beat the fucking shit out of you every fucking day. You know what? You're still going to take it. Why? Because we're the United States. We still got the most productive capacity in the world. We're at least a third of global GDP. We're less corrupt than any other major economy out there. And so guess what? Oh, and by the way, we still have the best future growth because we're relatively free. Everyone wants to come here. And we have still, to this day, the most advanced technology. And we still come up with the most advanced technology. That's the one thing we got for. So we're still the best game in town. Oh yeah, we may beat you. Oh yeah, we may get you hooked on heroin. Oh yeah, we might I don't know, beat your children that you brought in. Oh, we're that evil stepfather that beats you and the children, and we get you all hooked up on coke. You're still gonna come back because you need us. We're the only game in town. What are you gonna do? China? They're fucking corrupt as hell, and they've got their own financial problems. Russia's corrupt as hell, and they're completely dependent on oil. Well, there's another place. If we go down, the price of oil would collapse. In real terms, global terms, and Russia would have no fucking budget. Who else? Who else is gonna, name it? Europe? You guys are too big. You won't even protect your own fucking borders. You guys are a bunch of lazy socialist fucks. You're more concerned about how can we bleed our money and enslave ourselves to a bunch of people coming from the second world that hate our gut. You guys aren't gonna. Wait, come on. Mexico, Mexico's economy actually is growing quite well. And there's some other gems out there, but they're not big enough that people could lend to get, like, in other words, for example, Switzerland. A lot of people, why can't Switzerland, they have a better currency, they have better finances. Why can't we have the Swiss franc? Swiss franc? Yeah. Swiss franc. Why can't the Swiss franc be the world's reserve currency? Because in the end, that piece of paper has to have some kind of value. You have to be able to do something with it. Well, what's the only thing you can do with a Swiss franc? Buy things in Switzerland. Does Switzerland have a large enough economy that people would be willing to take Swiss francs so that someday, maybe they won't spend that money, but it has value because someday you could go to Switzerland and take that and buy something? Well, what in the whole world all of a sudden, trillions of dollars would start flowing and buying Swiss francs? What if they were to come back and try and buy Swiss goods? You have trillions of dollars buying, I don't know what the GDP of Switzerland is. But well, let's look it up. I mean, it's not going to take that long. How long would it take us to look up? Switzerland GDP. Yeah, half a trillion, $700 billion. So $700 billion. You have multiple trillions of dollars, francs, chasing only $700 billion worth of goods. People would say, hey, wait a minute. Switzerland cannot possibly produce enough GDP to give all this currency that they issued against it. The U.S. can. So suck our fucking dick. And then also tied to that is our military. I know our aircraft carriers and nuclear missiles just suck our fucking dick. You will come back to us like the millennial fat feminist with illegitimate children, 5 different children from 6 different fathers. You will come back to us because we're the only ones that will take you. And then people will lend back to the United States, and we'll just continue this process over and over again. And then I would love, I'd actually start watching economists analyze this again just to see what Keynesian bullshit they would explain that. I just would love to see their take. It'd be like watching people who've never played football when they do the post game show. Well, you see, little Jim, gotta throw the ball there and get in there. It's like, dude, shut the fuck up. You're not a goddamn football player. You're not the fucking coach. You're not on the team. Shut the fuck up with your. I mean, it would be like watching those economists talk about shit they don't know. This happened. Well, so yeah, that's what would happen. It'd be like Argentina. There'd be a crash, but inevitably, once things got back to quote normal, the world would come running back to us again because we're the only team in town. So anyway, and that's basically it. I mean, there'd be a big ass recession globally. Oh, the international government organizations like the IMF and the UN would call emergency things and all that. And you know what? It's just going to be more government money being printed off. There might be a rework with debt, kind of like what we did with Greece. It would be slow. It wouldn't be conclusive. It wouldn't have any action. The only thing what would be great is, once again, the world would have to suck the Don's dick because the Trumpster would do it he needs some permission, but he would take action. Conclusive, decisive, effective action. Now, it may be bad decision. It may cause great harm, but it would be an actual decision that would be made and executed. That would then cause a consequence of governments doing what they do, taking time they don't have. How long did it take to get TARP together, even though TARP was flawed? How long did it take that to get together? I mean, it takes them forever to respond. And what do you want to do? So it'll throw the world into turmoil. The governments and agencies and the NGOs and the UN and all these other international organizations, they'll try and put something together. It won't work. It'll put the Band-Aid on thing. But at least what Trump will have done is moved the solution, the solving of the U.S. debt problem further than anybody ever has ever. And he could do it in a week. He could. And that will at least move the ball to the point, like, it's kind of like someone's got cancer, but they don't believe it and they won't go to the hospital. Like, Trump got us into the hospital, and now you got to go into surgery. Oh my God, we're going into surgery. Yeah, you were going to die if we didn't get your ass into the hospital, and at least you admit you had a problem. So I think this would be a great step. I don't know if it's the best thing to do. I'm not paid to come up with an idea. I do have some ideas that I have to flesh out a little bit and think them through. I would have some other ideas. But, anytime the U.S. federal government and the Democrats can come consult me, if something tells me you're going to talk to Krugster and fucking Robert Reich, and they're going to tell you the same shit, and you're going to keep doing the same thing, expecting different results, and that's the definition of insanity. AssholeConsulting.com. Go there if you got questions. Give me your money, and I will take a multi-billion-dollar contract to advise you on how to get out of this national debt problem. Toodles.